Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. We're alive. We're alive. Wonderful, wonderful. We have a little different today. No Bina, but we'll just at least I'm hoping Bina will come. But Bina had connection issues. That's why we weren't here yesterday either. Couldn't collect. So hello, Styling Ocean Dive. That's a very interesting name. Styling Ocean Dive. One wonders what that looks like. Yeah, what a styling ocean dive would look like. I was just thinking, somebody was talking about a cannonball, right? They said the quickest way to get water out of a bath, and the guy said cannonball. But I was thinking that when I was a kid and we went to the public swimming pool, making the biggest splash, this was a big thing for some of the boys. It was a whole group of them. They were really into this. But the biggest splash they made was not from the cannonball. They would dive in with their like in a U shape with their arms and legs extended, and that made the biggest splash. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. It was quite fascinating. So the cannonball didn't produce the biggest splash. Anyway, so styling ocean dive, I don't know if you maybe do something similar. I doubt it from if you're diving off a cliff or something, but it implies, ocean dive, that it's off of a cliff, but I suppose you could dive off a jetty or just dive anywhere. I don't know. I'm not sure how you dive into the ocean. It could be off a boat, all sorts of options. Anyway, I'd be curious to know a little more. See how my mind that's just how my mind works. I'm just curious about stuff. I want to know. I want to know. TikTok doesn't want to connect either today. So, yeah. All right. Well, sorry, TikTok. We'll keep trying, but well, I guess there's nobody there for me to say sorry to. All right. We better get going. We're gonna continue. We're gonna continue with the reading of Carlos. And we're on book 2, A Separate Reality. I just want to share real quick to the group here, and then we'll get going. We'll get going right away. And again, hoping Bina comes. Hoping Bina comes. Styling Ocean Dive says, hey, check my Instagram. You will come to know. Okay. Basically, it's a styling ocean in which I dive. I see. Okay. So it's underwater diving, like deep sea diving. Okay. I don't know if divers use this as much as I imagine they would, but I use it as an analogy, and just an idea, an expression, right? That rule number one of when you're doing deep sea diving, like when you're diving really deep, I don't mean snorkeling, but I guess even in snorkeling it's important. But if you're doing deep sea diving, right, oxygen tanks, you're going down deep. Rule number one is to always know where the surface is, right? And so I use this as a metaphorical example of, likewise, in our awareness, to not to fall into bubbles, yeah, and to know where the surface is. In other words, always be connected to overview awareness, yeah. And this is a good analogy. So since you're a deep sea diver, I'm assuming that you can confirm it's very important to always know where the surface is, right? Yeah. Very good, very good, very nice. Starting ocean dive, very cool, very cool. And then now, what really fascinates me is that there are 94 of you. Yeah, I would have thought this is a fairly unique name, and but you got Starting Ocean Dive 94, implying there's 93 others. Quite fascinating. All right, I'm teasing a little bit, but it always amuses me when I see the numbers to think that. Just having fun with stuff, having fun with stuff. Oh, but anyway, that knowing where the surface is, in deep sea diving, this is of course very crucial because, you can easily get disorientated under the water. Sand gets kicked up, or and it makes it murky or whatever. A lot of reasons why you can lose your orientation, and then you think you're going up, but you're actually going down because you can't tell with gravity. Yeah? See, you lose your reference point. So it's very important to always have some kind of a reference point. But likewise, when it comes to our awareness, the same thing happens. Yeah, that we get caught up in awareness bubbles, like an anger bubble or whatever, and we lose our reference point. We lose that overview perspective. And inside the bubble, we think we're doing what's sensible. What makes sense when you're angry doesn't make sense when you're not angry, when you're seeing the big picture, right? When you see that overview, when you are connecting from the surface, things look very different. The surface here representing overview perspective. When you look at your entire life, when you look at things through the context of goodness and your aspirations, what is important to you, what you'd like to be and accomplish, and who you'd like to be, what you'd like to be, etc. And when you understand this, there's a great, great, great power to that. Yes. Very, very, very potent and useful. So it's a good analogy. Always know where the surface is, right? Rule number one for scuba diving. At least that's the way I imagine it. Yeah, 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 yeah. I imagined you were born in 1994. I just tease with that 94. It's typical that people put the year of their birth behind that there. Yes. Yeah. But I like to have fun with stuff, and that just adds a little extra to things. So why not? Why not? Right? May as well. May as well. Well, at least there's some validity to my perspective of that number. In the beginning, or at least in gaming especially, but in the early days of the internet, when people made handles, and they were still called handles, right? I don't think anybody uses the handle anymore to have some fun with that. But when you were making a handle, right, for your like it used to be for the email accounts, or you're on AOL or wherever, you made your internet handle. It was a very big deal. So then people made names, and then it's been taken, and then they put the number behind. So in gaming, this was so too, right? So that's where that numbering idea came from. Now it's not so much relevant anymore. People put numbers for other reasons, but back then it was because you couldn't use the same handle as somebody else, right? Now on Facebook you can, which is rather interesting, but in other places you couldn't. No, right? So, and it's still in many games that you've got to have a unique name. So when there's a very cool name and you want it, you just everybody wants to be Wolverine. So that's Wolverine 1, Wolverine 2, whatever. uh, Okay, I'm just trying to share here, but it's being difficult. So did I share already? Well, I don't know why, but and then I want to get to reading, so we'll get there in a moment. Usually Venus does the introduction thought of the day during this time. It's difficult to do these things because I have to kind of concentrate to get it all ready, hook up all the things, go live on Instagram. It's a separate click that I have to do. Then I have to click the record button and the grain record button. And now, I'm marking the thing as shared in the group, and then I mark it as featured. So it's just little things that take time, especially when the internet's slow. You click on the button and it times out, it loads, it loads, it loads. Right? Yeah, okay, pin to featured, and add post to guide. So just little things, but they take time. They take time, but they do matter. They are important. Yeah, are important. All right. There we go. All right, let's get to reading. Let's get to reading. And like I said, we were on, we're reading A Separate Reality, book 2 of the Carlos Castaneda books, in which he details his apprenticeship with Don Juan. Now, we're not so much interested in the more esoteric aspects of this. We are focused on the self-improvement parts, right? Because that we can apply ourselves. There's many things that Carlos talks about that we can't do ourselves, but those parts that we can apply to ourselves, right? Those basically come to character training, self-improvement, in other words, right? In the fullest sense of it, right? And today, self-improvement, I see a lot of groups on self-improvement, and people in my own group, in the Sassy group, right? People come and they post business stuff, how to make money. That's not self-improvement. That's adding to your wealth. you can still be the same knucklehead and idiot and fool, and you might be a horrible person, but make lots of money, right? So we have to understand the difference, right? Making more money doesn't improve yourself. It may improve your life, but it doesn't improve you as a person, right? So self-improvement means improving who you actually are, whether you have money or not, right? This is very, very important, yeah. Okay, so we'll continue where we were last time. I'm going to read over a little bit. I actually was so keen for Bina to be here on this part because I don't want you to miss this. But Bina, you and I will just have to do it. We'll just have to do it by ourselves. Okay, just going to have to be that way because we skipped yesterday already, and I try not to skip too many of the lives. Brilliant. All right, before I go, let me just check and see. There we go. All right, Starling Ocean Dive. We're about to dive into a different ocean. Yes. And this is the ocean of Don Juan's world. Yeah, Don Juan's world is very sophisticated. It is extensive, it's comprehensive, complex, right? In other words, there's a lot to Don Juan's world. And it is very much like ocean diving. Yeah, very similar. Very similar. Yeah. It's a different world under there, and different rules apply. Right? Like in our world, we take gravity for granted. But when you're diving, nope, gravity, no, it's not the same, right? Not the same at all. So it's very important to be aware that different worlds have different rules. Don't assume that the rules that you take for granted apply. No? I mean, look, breathing when you're underwater, it's a whole different deal. You got to be paying attention. And, you say, well, we breathe, air. Well, you can't always breathe air when you're deep diving. If you get ready to go very deep, then you have to change that mixture, right? And because under pressure, oxygen changes and nitrogen, all this stuff, right? And if you don't do it properly, you end up with nitrogen bubbles in your blood and you get the bends, and well, that's a big problem, right? So again, I'm saying different worlds, different rules. Be aware of what those are. And that's what we're learning very much here now, right? So this is an alternate reality, and we're finding out about this alternate reality. But underlying all of this is the character training, and that's what my focus is, right? Because I come from Moreness-Culture, Way of Impeccability, which is the foundation of that, and this is all about character training. If you have your character appropriately trained, you're able to function in any world. For instance, whether you in the surface world or you underwater, yeah, or out in space, you need thoroughness, discipline, diligence, comprehensiveness, thoughtfulness, awareness, discernment, understanding, yeah, patience. All of these character qualities, they apply in any reality. Yeah, you want to be a good diver under the ocean? Well, be thorough. In other words, be impeccable, because impeccability is including all of that. Yeah, that's it. So when you learn impeccability, especially way of impeccability, you have a deeper understanding and an awareness that enables you to function in any environment. This is my focus. Yeah, this is what Moreness-Culture, which is what I'm sharing, but my lives are all about. It's all about Moreness-Culture, and we are practicing discernment in our reading, to look at the moreness, not just to read the story itself, but to see what is implied by it, what connects to it, how this connects to Moreness-Culture, etc., etc. So we're doing a lot more than just reading. It's a capital R reading, right? Detailed, comprehensive, layered reading. October 24, 1968, to continue the story. Yes, now we read a little bit about this, but we're going to be over this. Don Gennaro climbed up this waterfall, but really he was using his will, the fibers that come out of us. But you only will perceive those if you are able to, capital P, perceive, which is to perceive energy directly. What we see in our everyday world, what we perceive in our everyday world, is the materialization, the interpretation of energy. It's not the energy itself, right? It's an interpretation. M is equal to E divided by C squared, which is, right, to take the famous Einstein equation, right? And just take it the other way, right? And we now get matter, material, is energy divided or slowed down by a very large number, right? C squared is the speed of light squared. So it's a very large number. It's not infinite, a very large number. So it's slowed down, in other words, energy slowed down. So that's what we have. We've taken energy and we slow it down to make it comprehensible for us. Yeah? So what we see isn't the thing itself. It's an idea of the thing, a representation of the thing. Yeah? We have to be very, very, very key to understand this. Very, very important. But anyway, so we'll get to see this as we go along. We'll get to see much more of this capital P perceiving. October 24, 1968. I cornered Don Juan and told him I intuitively felt I was never going to get another lesson in equilibrium, and that he had to explain to me all the pertinent details, which I would otherwise never discover by myself. Don Juan said I was right, insofar as knowing that Don Gennaro would never give me another lesson. What else do you want to know? What are those tentacle-like fibers, Don Juan? They are the tentacles that come out of a man's body, which are apparent to any sorcerer who perceives. Now, if you're reading along with me, you'll see that I'm using a different word. Why? Because this one limits us to thinking that this is an issue of the eyes, and it's not. And Don Juan says this himself later in the books. He says it's a poor term, right? And so we are not going to get stuck. He's stuck with that term. It's part of his tradition. We're not going to do that. In Moreness-Culture, we are going to say perceive with a capital P, right? Perceive with that emphasis, the italics implies added to it, right? So they are the tentacles that come out of a man's body, which are apparent to any sorcerer who perceives. Sorcerers act towards people in accordance to the way they perceive their tentacles, right? He's saying that when you perceive energy directly, human beings, you perceive them as a egg-like cocoon of luminous fibers, and there are these tentacles that come out of the midsection, and with those tentacles we can interact with the world. Now, we haven't learned the skill because we think we interact with the world with our hands. We don't realize, we don't know there are other ways to interact with the world. Why? Because that's the way you do it in this perception, in this reality. But in the alternate reality, where you're perceiving energy directly, you can interact with the world with your fibers. And this is what Don Gennaro was doing, right? With his magical lesson to Don Juan. And yes, I know I'm saying Gennaro, that's just the way I know him. It's my name for him, right? Weak persons have very short, almost invisible fibers. Strong persons have bright, long ones. Gennaros, for instance, are so bright that they resemble thickness. You can tell from the fibers if a person is healthy or if they are sick, or if they are mean or kind or treacherous. You can also tell from the fibers if a person can perceive. Yeah, it's a baffling problem. When Gennaro perceived you, he knew, just like my friend Vicente did, that you could perceive. When I perceive you, I perceive that you can perceive. And yet I know myself that you can't. How baffling. Gennaro couldn't get over that. I told him that you were a strange fool. I think he wanted to perceive for himself and took you to the waterfall. And this is a big deal, right? This anomalousness of Carlos. It comes further later in the books. There's even more anomalousness to Carlos. And the reason for it is that if Carlos wasn't this strange fool, all of these things wouldn't be happening. Yeah, and we wouldn't get this magical multiple book series. It would be a lot shorter. If he was just sensible, he'd learn and move on, and that would be the end of it, right? And Don Juan and Don Gennaro wouldn't try all of these ways to get through to him to break his bubble. Carlos is incredibly stuck in his bubble. And all of these things they are doing, they're trying to crack his worldview, crack his bubble, right? And in that, this effort of theirs to crack his bubble, we get to know all of these things we wouldn't otherwise know. Right? It's a magical gift. The universe involved. It's an anomaly. It's anomalous. Whenever there's anomalousness, the universe is involved, right? Very important. At least this is from Moreness-Culture, Way of Impeccability. This is our understanding. Don't believe me, go and test it out yourself, right? Don't believe anything I say, go and test it, right? So when I say things like that, it sounds like I'm saying, oh, just believe me. No, no, no. Go and test it. Just check it out for yourself. Pay attention and you'll see it. It's self-proving, self-proving. Don Juan did not answer me. He remained silent. Oh, sorry. Carlos asked, why do you think I give the impression I can perceive? Don Juan did not answer me. He remained silent for a long time. I did not want to ask him anything else. Finally, he spoke to me and said that he knew why, but did not know how to explain it. You think everything in the world is simple to understand, because everything you do is a routine that is simple to understand. Don Juan is clearly telling Carlos here how much of a bubble he is in and how constricted his worldview is. Carlos, in his peculiar arrogance, because it's really an arrogance, thinks he knows how the world works. He's made a great effort. Carlos was a very deep student, and he read a lot of stuff, and he was very eager to know. But in that, his clarity of understanding the regular world has defeated him to a certain extent. Not entirely, but it's close, right? Remember, Don Juan said the four enemies of knowledge are first it's fear, then clarity, then power, and then old age. And here clarity is, because Carlos's clarity makes him think he actually knows the world when he doesn't have a clue. Yeah, he doesn't know about alternate realities, doesn't know a lot of stuff. But he does know the regular world, at least the world that he lives in. He does know this fairly well, right? But that's made him blind. That clarity has made him blind. So this is where clarity is a problem, right? Because it's clarity within the bubble, and it makes you believe the bubble is the world, and it's not, right? So we have to be very careful of that. We have to step outside the bubble. You think everything in the world is simple to understand, because everything you do is a routine that is simple to understand. At the waterfall, when you looked at Gennaro moving across the water, you believed that he was a master of somersaults, because somersaults was all you could think about. And that is all you will ever believe he did. Yet Gennaro never jumped across that river, that water. If he had jumped, he would have died. Gennaro balanced himself on his superb bright fibers. He made them long enough so that he could, let's say, roll on them across the waterfall. He demonstrated the proper way to make those tentacles long and how to move them with precision. What a lesson, what a lesson. Pablito perceived nearly all of Gennaro's movements. Nestor, on the other hand, perceived only the most obvious maneuvers. He missed the delicate details. But you perceived nothing at all. Perhaps if you had told me beforehand, Don Juan, what to look for. He interrupted me and said that giving me instructions would only have hindered Don Gennaro. Had I known what was going to take place, my fibers would have been agitated and would have interfered with Don Gennaro's. There's a crucial key point here. A very crucial key point, yeah, which is not obvious. We don't think that our attention, in other words, our state of being, has an effect around us, but it does. It does, right? It matters. It makes a difference, like in this case. Yeah? In this case, if Carlos had known, he would have interfered with Don Gennaro. This is very potent to be aware of. So we don't realize this. And this I learned this when I was a young man. Right, and to tell the story. All right, just live on TikTok, and for the TikTokers coming on, we continuing where we left off last time. If anybody's following, we're reading Carlos Castaneda's books. We're on book 2, and Don Gennaro has given a demonstration of the use of one's luminous fibers, right, or will as well. And Don Juan calls it will later on. Right now, he just calls it luminous fibers. And this is something that we don't realize. He's explaining to Carlos. Carlos says, oh, well, you could have told me beforehand. I would have known what to look for. No, he said, then your fibers would have been agitated, and this would have caused a problem, right? And we don't realize that our fibers do affect things. And I'll give you an example of when I realized this. When I was a young man, I ended up in the desert, and from the desert, I ended up living on a mountain, and on top of this mountain, I ended up starting a little restaurant there. But also, the last remaining tribe of South African Bushmen came to live on the mountain as well, right? The owners of it's a game ranch on top of the mountain, a big flat mountain, right? So a lot of space on the mountain. At any rate, so I spent a lot of time with these Bushmen, kind of became part of the tribe. They sort of adopted us in. At some point, winter came on, and the owners said, well, these guys are living in their traditional little reed structures, and these aren't very good. It snows quite heavily up here on the mountain. Now, the Bushmen did live there once upon a time before. There are a lot of cave paintings there, but maybe they lived in caves back then, but there weren't any caves close by. Anyway, so they wanted me to build housing huts for these Bushmen. So I went around and said, well, where would you like them? And one of the Bushmen, her name was Lace, younger, very energized, very outspoken. Hello, 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 for the people on Charlotte and David, and I can't read your name because it's in, I imagine, some Cyrillic, or no, not Cyrillic, but anyway, some Eastern things. Anyway, I'm pleased to have you all here. Pleased to have you all here. So I'm telling a story about how our energy affects that of others. Anyway, so I'm asking her, where would you like? So Lace comes to me and she's very annoyed with me. I mean, really irritated, like majorly pissed off, right? Angry. And she says, what the hell are you doing asking us? You're the boss. You're in charge. You put them where you want to. I'm like, holy moly. Like, wow, I'm trying to be kind and considerate here. And I was annoyed at her reaction because, yeah, I'm making every effort to be considerate. And she comes and craps on my head, And I mean, yes, I kind of understood her perspective, but at the same time, just because that's typically how bosses and things work, doesn't mean that I had to do this. And furthermore, you get some advantage out of it. So I pushed energy back at her. I could feel it at the time. I'm like pushing back at all this negativity coming to me, and I gave her crap right back, and scolded her for this totally idiotic perspective that she had. But I could feel at the time how my energy pushed back at her. Right. Anyway, so our argument ends and off she goes, and well, I just then abandoned my quest to ask people where to build huts, and I figured it out, and got started and directed the workers where to build them. Anyway, so I come back and go and get done, and I come back like an hour or two later, and all the women are congregated. Lace is lying on her back on the ground, and all the women are around her. Oh my goodness, did they give me the black looks, right? Staring daggers at me. I mean, seriously, I was the biggest villain on the earth at that time. All the women were just like scowling at me and saying, like basically, you are a person. And I'm like, what the hell happened now, So, and I said, what's wrong with Lace? Eventually, I got one of them to explain to me. And so they said, well, you did this. I'm like, what? And then they explained, oh, that energy that I pushed at Lace, it made her ill. It made her physically ill. She was lying on the ground there, groaning and moaning, and very ill indeed. And I'm like, oh crap, because then I could connect my feeling at the time of arguing with Lace, of actually that intent to push the energy back at her, because it was so, to me, so preposterous, so outrageous, her coming and crapping on me for helping them, right? I was like really annoyed. Yeah. So this was something that really shocked me when the one woman explained that I had made Lace ill. And yeah, I'm connecting this to the point that Don Juan is making about why he didn't tell Carlos ahead of time what was going on, because Carlos would have been all agitated and his fibers would have interfered with Don Gennaro. And when we realize this, we realize, right, in this understanding, and for me, I realized then that I need to be exquisitely careful with my energy, particularly when there's an intent involved. Yeah, like Carlos would have had the intent to understand. When you have an intent that pushes your energy, your fibers out there. Yeah? So pay attention to this. So don't just think, oh, you can be annoyed with somebody and it's just words. No, there's an actual physical energy that involves, and it commingles with others, and it can cause problems. Yeah, like in this case. Now, we have a lot of buffers and filters, but when you're feeling bad or whatever, we feel in a lot of ways. We don't think of the origins. We say, oh, it must be because of this. I picked up a virus or this or that. In our worldview, we don't say, oh, maybe I picked up some bad energy from somewhere, right? Pay attention. This can happen, people. Pay attention. This can happen. Yes, and pay attention to your energy and what you do with it. Yeah, and because if you are making somebody else sick in the way that energy works, that's going to be a cost on you. Yeah, don't just think, oh, I've got power to make people make sick, and that's the stupid way. That's the superiority paradigm. That's the idiots of old used to think that, and they didn't realize that everything has balance, right? And if you're going to do stupid things, you're going to get stupid results for yourself, right? It's always a negative payoff for you when you're acting inappropriately, right? So be appropriate, be impeccable, in other words. Very, very important. So this is a key point, understanding that we are energy beings. Even if you can't perceive that energy directly, doesn't mean you cannot be aware of it. I knew at the time when I was arguing with Lace, there came a point where I'm like, no, bloody hell, crap with this. Enough. I'm being crapped on for no good reason here. And I really pushed back hard. Now I've got high energy, and I didn't realize my own power at the time. And that shocked me. Yeah. And it really changed my life. And I shifted from after that, right? It was a big deal. A very memorable event. Very powerful. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Very important. All right, so Don, he interrupted me and said, I'm going back to reading now, right? At this point, Carlos is asking about Don Gennaro's lesson with the energy fibers. He interrupted me and said that giving me instructions would only have hindered Don Gennaro. Had I known what was going to take place, my fibers would have been agitated, and would have interfered with Don Gennaro's. If you could perceive, he said, it would have been obvious to you from the first step that Gennaro took that he was not slipping as he went up the side of the waterfall. Up the side of the waterfall, he was loosening his tentacles. Twice he made them go around boulders and held to the sheer rock like a fly. When he got to the top and was ready to cross the water, he focused them onto a small rock in the middle of the stream. And when they were secured there, he let the fibers pull him. Gennaro never jumped, and therefore he could land on the slippery surfaces of small boulders at the very edge of the water. His fibers were at all times neatly wrapped around every rock he used. He did not stay on that first boulder very long, because he had the rest of his fibers tied onto another one, even smaller, at the place where the onrush of the water was the greatest. His tentacles pulled him again, and he landed on it. That was the most outstanding thing he did. The surface was too small for a man to hold onto, and the onrush of the water would have washed his body over the precipice had he not had some of his fibers still focused on the first rock. Wow. He stayed in that second position for a long time because he had to draw out his tentacles again and send them across to the other side of the fall. When he had them secured, he had to release the fibers focused on the first rock. That was very tricky. Perhaps only Gennaro could do that. He nearly lost his grip, or maybe he was only fooling us. We'll never know that for sure. Personally, I really think he nearly lost his grip. I know that because he became rigid and sent out a magnificent shoot like a beam of light across the water. I feel that beam alone could have pulled him through. When he got to the other side, he stood up and let his fingers glow like a cluster of lights. That was the one thing he did just for you. If you had been able to perceive, you would have perceived that. Gennaro stood there looking at you, and then he knew that you had not perceived. In other words, Gennaro is giving a masterful demonstration of the use of one's fibers, right? One's will, yes? This is just a magical thing that he did here, not just for Carlos. In particular, he was looking to Carlos, but also for his own apprentices, Pablito and Nesta. Right? Just magical. And when we see this and we understand, we recognize or we can be aware of the sophistication of Don Gennaro. When he hangs around, he's always fooling around, right? He seems like somewhat of a buffoon. But in his buffoonery, there's an underlying sophistication, an incredible sophistication. Right? And we need to be aware that sophistication exists. You cannot always perceive it directly. Yeah? You have to give it time to surface. And also, when it comes to sophistication, we need sophisticated perception in the first place, whether it's the sophistication in alternate realities, like in the case with Don Gennaro, or in this reality, either way. We need to develop the ability, the sophistication to be able to perceive sophistication. If you don't have that, if you're not aware of what sophistication is, you'll never perceive it. Yeah? And you'll miss it because you'll meet somebody and they'll appear to be an ordinary person, but actually they're being sophisticated. And you won't notice it, you won't see it, right? Because it'll just seem like something ordinary. And this is a very, very visceral, very graphic illustration of that. All Carlos saw was Don Gennaro on the waterfall. He thought he did a somersault and a jump, and he put it in ordinary terms of like physical prowess, of acrobatics, gymnastics, whatever, right? Because that's the only way his brain could interpret it. And that's what we do in our world around us all the time. We are constantly interpreting, but we interpret according to filters, and we don't realize how much we miss because our filters are very limited. Yeah, very, 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 very crucial. Very big part. All right, we come to part 2, the task of seeing. And I think that I'll have a very short live today because Bina's not here, and I want to start this with her, and I want to reread that part with Bina too. Bina is a very big part of what I do. She's the co-host of everything, and we're going to be doing our own TV show soon. Anyway, so I don't want her to miss this part, and it's a very crucial part. So I'm just going to have a short live today. And please, I love it. All you guys on TikTok, I sent you highs there, back to you. And, please ask questions. Anytime. We love questions. We love comments. Please ask them. Ask, right? And hello to Rashadman and Shiv Akumar that joined us on Instagram also. I would mention all your names on TikTok, but there are too many. Sorry, I mean there's so many of you. I can't say them all, right? There are too many to say. Well, I guess not. PJ or Diego, John Flat, Jersey Girl, Topco, Tokay, Nihi Tip. Wow, that's an interesting name. Nii Tip. Huh. Nai Tip? Nihi Tip? No. Anyway. So hello everybody. Hello everybody. I'm always thrilled to have you here. I really am. And I'm very eager to hear your comments, hear your thoughts. But I'm going to wrap it up there for today. Because like I said, I want to continue with Bina. And this part 2, the task of seeing, it's a major part, right? The task of perceiving. Yes. And that's what it is. I mean, yes, he uses the word seeing, but we don't want to use this word because it's not a visual thing. Perceiving is with all your senses. Like I perceived the energy there via feeling that I was pushing the energy. I didn't see it, right? But I felt it. Yeah? And I knew it to be something. And I could feel it coming out of my body at the time from my abdomen, right? And I felt that other times too. Actively when I used my will, right? I felt that. I've experienced the active feeling of it, right? Deliberately using my will. I used it somewhat inappropriately and felt a bit bad about it later, but okay. Well, not terribly. It was sort of for, to further very petty, mild ambition. I was like, come on, really. And that's very lame. Anyway, I was young at the time, so I'll forgive myself. But still, pay attention, in other words. And realize, the takeaway from this is that the world does not work the way we think it does. Once we realize that, now we're starting on a whole different path. And we're starting to look for, well, how else does the world work? And we break free from the arrogance of perception, which maintains us and locks us into the world, that we have our worldviews, right? And we get stuck there and we just think we know, but we don't know, right? So when we embrace this is major, very, very, very big deal. All right, so on that note, I will end everything, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. This is exciting stuff, very, very exciting stuff. So all right, bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. And we'll see you all tomorrow. I'll see you all tomorrow. Very cool. End all the lives here. I got to do it all individually, by the way, so you would hope that it would be able to do it in one place, but not so. All right, and live on TikTok and then on Zoom. All right, bye-bye.